Welcome to Roll Credits, where movie lovers get the trivia they didn't know they needed. This podcast was created with help from AI tools, so double-check any quotes before you drop trivia at your next movie night. Today, we're blasting into the new DC universe with Supergirl, a cosmic adventure that introduces a very different Girl of Steel.
Yeah, it is such a wild departure from what you might expect.
It really is, because normally when you think about the psychological baggage of a classic superhero, right, it looks like a neatly organized stainless steel briefcase.
Right, very pristine.
Exactly. You pop it open, and everything is just perfectly filed away. You get morals, ethics, a clear sense of truth and justice right there on top.
Yeah, very Superman, very Boy Scout.
Right. But when you look at this 2026 iteration of Supergirl, that briefcase is just completely gone.
It doesn't even exist.
No. What you have instead is a battered canvas duffel bag being dragged on the ground. The zipper is completely busted. It's covered in all these intergalactic bumper stickers, and it is actively leaking like unresolved trauma. And probably an empty bottle of tequila and a vintage punk rock t-shirt.
Which is such a brilliant visual. It's a really profound study in what actual unprocessed emotional baggage looks like when it's just strapped to someone with godlike power.
And that is exactly what we are unpacking in this deep dive today. Our mission here is to explore how this new film completely redefines Kara Zor-El.
Which was a huge risk, honestly.
Huge. We're looking at the mechanics of transforming her from Superman's sunny, optimistic cousin into this really gritty, traumatized anti-hero on a cosmic quest for vengeance.
Yeah.
And we're also going to break down how director Craig Gillespie and screenwriter Anna Nogueira took Tom King's award-winning comic and engineered it into this visually stunning tactile space western.
Yeah, and to really grasp the mechanics of that whole cosmic journey, you have to first understand the intensely isolated headspace Kara is trapped in at the start of the film.
Right.
Because everything about her eventual growth, her whole arc, hinges entirely on where her baseline is set at the beginning.
Okay, let's unpack this baseline then. Because if you walk into this movie expecting a female Boy Scout, you are in for a massive shock.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like expecting a Boy Scout and instead getting, a punk rocker with severe PTSD. Kara is 23 years old here. And the foundational difference between her and Clark Kent, which is the contrast that drives her entire psychology, is how they actually experience the destruction of Krypton.
Exactly. It's the difference between theoretical loss and visceral loss.
Wow.
Because Clark has no memories of Krypton, right?
Right, he was a baby.
Yeah. For him, it's this tragic story he was told by holographic parents. But Kara lived it. She spent the first 14 years of her life in Argo City.
Which was a domed piece of Krypton. Right.
Exactly. It was a domed remnant that survived the initial planetary explosion. But think about the psychological toll of that. For over a decade, she didn't just know her world was gone. She lived in the rotting, decaying ruins of a golden age.
Oh, man.
Yeah, watching her friends and her family slowly succumb to starvation and radiation before she was finally sent to Earth, you just cannot overstate how that shapes a developing brain.
Right, because when the defining everyday reality of your childhood is an agonizing, unfixable collapse, optimism just feels like a delusion at that point.
It feels like a lie. Exactly.
Which completely explains why she isn't exactly eager to put on a cape and smile for the cameras. When we catch up with her in the present timeline, she's essentially living this ultimate destructive van life.
Which is so funny for a Kryptonian.
It is. She's cruising the galaxy in a battered spaceship that looks less like a sleek sci-fi vessel and way more like a dilapidated, lethal weapon-inspired RV.
Covered in Polaroids and vinyl records.
Total deliberate chaos. And the only living thing she actually allows herself to care about is her dog, Crypto.
Right.
So when this ruthless mercenary named Krem of the Yellow Hills poisons Crypto, she drops off the grid completely to hunt him down.
And it's such a grounded, raw, inciting incident. The stakes aren't save the multiverse. The stakes are save my dog.
John Wick style.
Literally. It's
Yeah.
a beautifully simple engine for a really complex character study. And Millie Alcock's performance, she anchors all that jagged grief perfectly.
She is incredible in this.
She really is. And a great example of her dedication is how she approached the Kryptonian language.
Oh, I love this story.
Right. She didn't just memorize phonetic lines for the day of the shoot. She used the exact same immersive method she used to learn High Valyrian for House of the Dragon.
That is wild.
Yeah, relying heavily on constant audio tracks and repetitive drilling until she completely internalized the cadence. It stunned her castmates.
Well, and learning a constructed language through pure audio repetition like that makes so much sense for her character. It bypasses the analytical part of the brain. She wasn't thinking about translating the lines in her head.
Mhm.
The alien grief just felt completely native and visceral.
Exactly.
It totally tracks with why James Gunn cast her the moment he took over DC Studios.
Yeah.
He literally saw her performance in House of the Dragon and said something like, "That little girl, she's really got something special."
Yeah, he knew immediately.
But wait, let me play devil's advocate for a second.
Okay.
We have a legacy hero here, right? And she's messy. I mean, aren't they running a huge risk of alienating a massive chunk of traditional superhero fans by making her this abrasive?
You know, it's a calculated risk, but I think it reflects a really vital evolution in how we write female superheroes.
How so?
Well, what's fascinating here is that for decades, female heroes have been burdened with this exhausting double standard. They had to be perfect, morally upright, poised, pleasant, and endlessly empathetic.
Oh, totally. Always smiling.
Always. Meanwhile, male heroes have had a free pass for decades to be anti-heroes, to be messy, to be alcoholics.
To make terrible, selfish choices.
Exactly. So allowing Kara to be cynical and flawed and deeply imperfect isn't alienating, it's equalizing. It gives her a psychological depth that modern audiences really crave. She hasn't lost her moral compass. She's just been robbed of everything she ever loved.
Right. She's reacting honestly to an unjust, chaotic universe.
Exactly.
And that abrasive exterior is exactly what makes the central relationship of the movie work so well. Because someone has to break through that armor and ends up being a 13-year-old girl named Ruthie Mary Knoll, played by Eve Ridley.
Who is fantastic.
She is. And this partnership completely shifts the genre of the film. It goes from a solo sci-fi revenge trip into a full-blown, true grit-style cosmic western.
Yeah, the True Grit parallel is basically the structural spine of the whole film. Kara steps directly into the Rooster Cogburn archetype, the jaded, heavily armed, reluctant protector.
And Ruthie is the Maddie Ross figure.
Right. Ruthie's family was murdered by the same mercenary Krem, and she is absolutely laser-focused on hiring Kara to execute him.
And Kara initially rejects her outright. She doesn't want a crusade. She just wants the antidote for crypto.
Mm.
But Ruthie has this relentless, stubborn patience. And she slowly wears Kara down.
That's a great dynamic.
It really is. And this entire dynamic is pulled straight from the highly acclaimed 2021 comic Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow by Tom King and Bilquis Evely.
Which is a masterpiece.
It is. But here's where the adaptation process gets really fascinating. Because imagine you're adapting an award-winning comic, but you strip out the main narrator and you completely change the ending.
Yeah, those are big swings.
Huge. How do you keep the soul of the story intact when you do that?
Well, you would think it guts the story, but screenwriter Anna Noguera made a brilliant, necessary structural choice for the medium of film. You know, a comic can rely on lyrical, overarching narration from an older Ruthie looking back on a grand fable.
Right, looking back on the past?
Right. But film is a much more immediate medium. By removing that narration and cutting the massive time skips from the comic, along with dropping entire side plots, like the segregated planet of Maypole, she distilled it into a simple, relatable human story.
It keeps it firmly as Kara's story.
Exactly. It forces the audience to experience Kara's raw trauma and growth in the present tense. It's no longer a story being told to you, it's a visceral experience you are having alongside them in real time.
And they changed the ending in a massive way, too.
They did.
In the comic, Krem is trapped in the Phantom Zone for centuries, and eventually an elderly Ruthie beats him with her cane and walks away.
Yeah.
But in the film, Kara just straight up kills him.
Yeah, and that change alters the entire thematic weight of the climax. Having Kara deliver the final fatal blow makes her ultimate choices feel more immediate and impactful. It forces her to take ultimate permanent ownership of her vengeance.
Right.
When Kara kills him, she crosses a line that forces her to figure out what kind of hero she is actually going to be moving forward.
Well, and a Western is only as good as the outlaws, forcing the hero to make those choices. So let's talk about the targets they are chasing, starting with Krem of the Yellow Hills, played by Matthias Schoenaerts.
He is terrifying.
So terrifying.
Yeah.
In the original comics, Krem was essentially a ginger-haired, swashbuckling space pirate. But the film radically redesigned him into this horrifying, bone armor-wearing monster with extensive, gruesome facial scarring.
Yeah, visual dehumanization plays a very specific role here. Krem shoots these rare poison arrows, and he is depicted as a psychotic, remorseless killer.
He actively revels in inflicting pain.
Exactly. By making him look like a literal monster, the film ensures the audience never mistakes him for a charming, misunderstood rogue. He is the physical embodiment of the unforgiving universe Kara believes she lives in.
But just as things get incredibly dark and heavy with Krem, the movie drops Jason Momoa into the mix.
No, man, Momoa.
Making his long-awaited debut as the intergalactic bounty hunter Lobo. And the behind-the-scenes story here is just fantastic.
So good.
The literal day James Gunn was announced as the new head of DC Studios, Momoa sent him a text that just said, "Thing Lobo."
It's the perfect casting marrying the perfect timing.
Truly.
And what's interesting from an adaptation standpoint is that Lobo does not appear in the final Woman of Tomorrow comic.
Wait, really?
Yeah. Tom King originally pitched including him, but he was cut from the book. Now, Momoa brings him to the screen with what the filmmakers call a high-impact 15% presence.
Oh, I like that phrasing.
Right. He isn't the main villain. He's a secondary wild card looking for a payday.
And the prop department clearly had a field day designing that wild card energy. Momoa personally requested a very specific loadout.
Oh, he was so involved.
He wanted fingerless gloves, metal claws, and a massively upgraded wallet chain that features a live, functional grenade attached to it.
Just casual.
Very casual. He also has this heavy brass punch lighter that he aggressively slams onto tables just to light a cigar.
Classic Lobo.
But here's where it gets really interesting. If you drop a bombastic, scenery-chewing personality like Momoa's Lobo into the middle of a delicate story about a grieving 23-year-old and an orphan kid, doesn't that totally distract from Kara and Ruthie?
If handled poorly, yes. But here, Lobo serves a very specific structural purpose within the Western genre.
Okay, how so?
Well, Westerns operate on a spectrum of white hats, black hats, and gray hats, right?
Right.
Kara is struggling immensely with her own moral gray areas. She is actively flirting with the darkness of murder and revenge. Having Lobo present a character who is completely unapologetically comfortable operating in the absolute darkest, greasiest shades of gray serves as a chaotic, wild mirror for Kara.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, he represents exactly what she will become if she completely abandons her moral compass. His abrasive presence forces her to look at her own trajectory.
He's a walking, talking, grenade-wearing cautionary tale. I love that. And, to ground characters that are this massive and weird, the filmmakers knew they couldn't just rely on green screens.
No, absolutely not.
Craig Gillespie directed this with a mandate to keep everything feeling messy and unbathed. He literally brought a pitch deck of 120 reference images featuring Thelma and Louise-style neon lighting and gritty 80s textures.
And that mandate translated into a staggering physical production mounted at Leavesden Studios in the UK.
It's insane what they built.
Yeah, they built over 20 massive physical sets. We are talking about constructing the classical Greco-Roman inspired architecture of Argo City, practically.
Wow.
And because the narrative relies on the memory of decay, the scenic artists physically painted layers of green rot and contamination onto these pristine sets.
To visually track the Empire's collapse.
Exactly, over 14 years of decay.
That is so cool. And the practical effects for the space travel sequences are wildly inventive, too. Instead of sleek digital teleportation beams, Kara and Ruthie end up riding on a wormhole bus.
Right, which sounds crazy but looks amazing.
It does. The production team built a set wider than a commercial airplane, packed it with stunt performers wearing heavy practical alien prosthetics, and engineered the entire set to violently rattle and shake during filming.
It gives it that tactile, lived-in feel.
Yes. But my absolute favorite detail, and this perfectly captures the joy of practical filmmaking for me, is the neon alien 7-Eleven rest stop.
Oh, the slug.
The slug. They built an actual animatronic slug creature that sits in the corner and poops popcorn.
It sounds totally absurd, but those bizarre, tangible details are the lifeblood of world building.
Exactly. It's the difference between looking at a digital painting of a spaceship and actually feeling the grease on the gears.
Yeah.
Because seeing an animatronic slug poop popcorn isn't just a visual gag. It fundamentally changes the psychology on set.
Yeah, 100%.
It forces the actors to react to a physical absurdity in real space. You get micro-expressions and a level of physical interaction that you simply cannot replicate when an actor is staring at a tennis ball on a stick waiting for CGI to be added later.
You've hit on the exact reason practical effects matter so much for a story like this. A deeply emotional coming-of-age story demands authenticity.
Right.
If your main character is fundamentally defined by the physical, tangible loss of her home planet, you cannot place her in an empty blue screen void.
That makes total sense.
Her environment has to have mass. Empty blue screens wouldn't support the emotional weight. The dirt under her fingernails and the grime on the walls at that rest stop mirror the grit she is carrying internally.
Man, that is so true. And that focus on tactile authenticity extends right into the costume design by Michael Mooney.
Yes, the costume's fantastic.
There was never debate about changing her iconic silhouette. She still wears the boots and the skirt. But they designed it for pure mobility. Because Millie Alcock trains so extensively, they removed all the traditional heavy muscle padding from the suit.
Which is rare for superhero suits.
Super rare. It's a body-close fit. And the fabric for her cape. They spent 3 entire months searching the globe for the perfect material. Because there's no bulky armor, the fabric itself has to do the heavy lifting in creating a silhouette of power during these intense, practical fight scenes against massive guys like Krem and Lobo.
And yet, what really defines this version of Kara is that she spends a significant portion of the film entirely out of that suit.
Right, she's in civilian clothes.
Yeah, she's off duty. She is actively trying to figure out who Kara is when she isn't carrying the suffocating weight of the Kryptonian Stay's shield.
And her civilian wardrobe is instantly iconic. She wears a long trench coat that mimics the flow of a cape, layered over a Debbie Harry Blondie graphic tee.
I love that shirt.
Me too. Gillespie and the team sorted through hundreds of indie and punk band logos before settling on Blondie. It serves as this perfect, rebellious earth-punk anchor for a girl who feels entirely out of place in the cosmos.
It really does.
And to make sure those costumes look right on camera, they utilize practical lighting for the alien suns. When Kara is under a red, green, or yellow sun, they didn't just slap a digital color filter over the lens in post-production. They physically bathed the sets and the actor's skin in those specific hues.
Which is so important because when you light a set practically, it changes the way shadows fall, how reflections work in the actor's eyes, and ultimately how the audience perceives the reality of the space.
Yeah, it just feels real.
Exactly, which is a perfect parallel to how they approach the audio landscape. Because you can't have a visually grounded, gritty universe and then pair it with generic, triumphant superhero music. The sensory experience has to be cohesive.
And that cohesion comes courtesy of composer Claudia Sarn, who actually stepped in after 2 previous composers left the project.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and what she delivered is totally unique to the superhero genre. The main theme for Supergirl is this chaotic, soaring arrangement that mixes hopeful, driving synthesizers with a massive, emboldened orchestra.
It feels like someone trying to find hope in a mess.
Exactly. But then you listen to what she did for Krem's theme. Sarn utilizes these deafening, horror movie-style, distorted electronics.
It physically grates against the heroism of Kara's theme.
It really does. It creates this intense oral friction in the theater, makes you feel the visceral threat he poses before he even draws a weapon.
And the needle drops in this film are just as calculated.
Oh, yeah.
Using Radiohead's Creep to score a sequence of Kara's ultimate isolating angst is brilliant. Plus, Millie Alcock actively pitched bringing in modern punk rock energy herself, suggesting bands like Wolf Alice for the soundtrack.
I love that she was so involved in that.
Right. It solidifies that rebellious vibe and anchors the movie in a very specific generational feeling of burnout.
So all of these elements, the music, the practical sets, the abrasive characterization, they build a highly specific identity for the film. And that identity is absolutely crucial when you look at where this movie sits in the larger DC Universe timeline.
Right, Chapter 1.
Yeah. Exactly, Chapter 1, Gods and Monsters. It directly follows David Corenswit's highly optimistic Superman from 2025, and it is actively laying the groundwork for the 2027 sequel, Man of Tomorrow.
Where Supergirl's going to return, right?
Yes. The overarching plan is that Supergirl will return in Man of Tomorrow to face Brainiac alongside Lex Luthor. So what does this all mean for you, the viewer?
That's the big question.
It means you are watching the architectural foundation of a cinematic universe being built not on invulnerability, but on vulnerability. You are seeing the messy, deeply human, trauma-informed building blocks of characters who are essentially gods.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it is an unbelievably bold, strategic move by James Gunn and DC Studios
Totally.
to launch a brand new cinematic universe and make your second major installment a gritty anti-hero space western. That is a massive swing. It signals to the audience that they aren't just going to rehash straightforward, optimistic superhero tales.
Right.
They're willing to explore the psychological, flawed, and sometimes profoundly ugly aspects of power. It proves a willingness to take risks.
It proves that we are finally getting heroes who are allowed to carry those busted duct tape duffel bags instead of the shiny briefcases.
Exactly. And I think that leaves us with one incredibly compelling thought to ponder as we look toward the future of this universe.
Let's hear it.
When Kara finally arrives on Earth and teams up with Superman and Man of Tomorrow to fight Brainiac, how is that dynamic going to work?
Oh, man.
You will have a hero who learned the meaning of justice in the gritty, unforgiving, lawless fringes of deep space, clashing with a hero who learned it from two loving parents on a wholesome farm in Kansas.
That is going to be intense.
The real battle might not be against the villain at all. The real battle might be between the cousins themselves.
Clark's pristine briefcase of morality sitting right next to Kara's battered bag of trauma. That is going to be an explosive family reunion. And that wraps our journey through Supergirl. If you enjoyed this episode, follow Roll Credits and share it with your fellow superhero fans. And let us know what film we should cover next, old or new. We'll be back soon with more trivia, more movie magic, and another adventure from the worlds of cinema.